Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to our talk. I appreciate you making it back from lunch. I'm Brad Abrams. Hi, how's it going, Rick?
You okay if I take your picture?
Sure. I'm not doing anything. So go ahead. So I'm Brad Abrams.
Oh, I'm Rick Spencer. I'm the Group User Experience Manager for Windows Live Local.
And I'm the Group Program Manager on the UIFX team, where one of the things we're building is Atlas. I hope you're enjoying Las Vegas and enjoying MIX. I know I'm having a great time at MIX, primarily because of you, because I get a chance to talk to the people that are literally shaping what the web is going to look like a couple of years from now. So I'm really excited to get the feedback on what we're doing with Atlas and the feedback for kind of where the web is going. So look forward to hearing from you. So along those lines, I thought maybe I'd start off with, since we have all these people, Rick, maybe we could use them.
Oh yeah, do a little
kind of
research.
User research, yeah.
Right.
So, what is your pet peeve about the web? What's something you really hate about the web? Really don't like about web apps today? What's wrong with web apps today? Anybody? Yeah, right here. Browser compatibility. That is a huge problem. I know that as I worked on my demo. Atlas helps that. Atlas helps that a ton. What else we got? Yeah. Too slow on postbacks. Thank you for the excellent setup. We will totally talk about too slow on postbacks. Anybody else?
157 passwords.
157 passwords. That's good. That's not this talk, but we have something for that. We have info card for that. That's a good one. There was one over here. Yeah.
Requires a constant connection.
Constant connection, always up. Yeah. Wi-Fi's getting ubiquitous, but you know, on the airplane on the way down, it wasn't ubiquitous for me. Rick, you have one? Put him on the spot.
Yeah, let me think. How about sometimes the back button works one way, sometimes it works another?
Yeah, kind of what's up with the back button? That's, I think, a problem we had to sort of wrestle through with ourselves. I'm not sure exactly what the back button should always do. I know half the time it doesn't do what I expect. Any others? Yeah, one more here, yeah. Postback, yes. Too many postbacks. Absolutely, that's a great one. So the way we're going to structure this talk is, as you probably gathered, Rick's the user experience guy, and he's going to talk a bit about what are the user experiences that we expect out of Web 2.0 apps. He's going to talk about 5. Actually, is it 5?
It's actually 6.
Actually 6. I think he added one last night. So he's going to talk about 6 user experiences that make great Web 2.0 applications. And then I'm going to come back up on stage, and we're going to walk through a demo to show how to use Atlas to build those, to implement all 6 of those experiences. So, Rick, I'll leave it in your hands.
Okay, Brad, thanks a lot. So let's see. To start with, could I get maybe my demo machine up on the screen? Nice. Hold on a sec. So, nice security. So, all right, this is Windows Live Local. So, this is a large website. We do have a lot of mapping functionality, a lot of searching functionality, and you can imagine from a designer's perspective, there's a lot of challenges. So, do we have designers in the audience tonight? Is anyone a designer? Put up their... Okay, nice. Fair amount of designers. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about my designer perspective, and be interested to see whether it resonates with you guys at all. So I joined the Windows Live Local team a little less than a year ago. And when I joined the team, I was excited about a lot of things. Really neat project. And I was excited about, well, taking all of our existing mapping assets, location basing assets, searching assets, and using the web to reach like even more users in more different ways. And so that was, you know, kind of a fundamental, it's a cool project type of excitement. But then my excitement started to evolve as I realized, wow, we're really like bringing different technologies and connecting users to the web and web technologies in a different way, in a new way. And for a lot of people, a lot of our users, it was their first experience with the kind of richness in an internet application. And then I realized, you know, we're connecting people together, right? People to people connectivity, and like, wow, what a cool time to be a designer. And then I started to think about it, you know, more broadly, like, wow, it's really great, you know, being in the user experience field in Windows Live Local, but being a designer on the web right now, just in general, is a really cool time. And so I think one of the interesting things that happened is, you might notice as you go around to talk today, the different talks at this conference, and talk to different developers and different technical people, they'll say things about how, well, the Atlas technology's actually been around for a while, right? And some of them are really proud about like how early they had some of their technology in the product. So what happened? Well, what I think happened was that designers started to push that technology, and that they started to iterate on the existing technology to drive new experiences. So this is one of the few times I've been in a circumstance where the technology has been modified to meet the experiences that we want to deliver instead of vice versa. So in some ways, it seems like Web 2.0 is not really a technical revolution as much as a designer's revolution. And so we as designers have a freedom to deliver experiences that we've never had before. And so let me go to some slides real quick. So a lot of people want to know then, okay, what are the best practices? Well, if you guys are hoping that someone's going to deliver like the Jacob Nielsen book, that is the definitive book on web usability, or the Krug definitive book on web design, or some definitive book on design philosophy, I'm starting to wonder whether that's not going to happen. Like maybe in the Web 2.0 world, it's actually impacting the way we think about best practices and think about design. So what I see happening on the web is that websites like this, and if you look in our speaker notes, you'll actually get the links to them, you'll see that different best practices, different perspectives are getting blogged, posted on the internet, and different perspectives, different opinions about those are getting forced into them in real time. And you can see day to day on the web how those best practices, those thoughts are getting stronger and stronger. If you look at this AJAX pattern site, it actually links to a book that he's writing for O'Reilly on AJAX patterns, and he's blogging it real time. And so you can go up and see as the best practices are being developed, see as the patterns are being developed. So I'm hoping that as we talk to you today, that these lessons from the trenches that we learned designing Windows Live Local is really just feeding into that Web 2.0 live conversation about best practices. So just a real quick summary of these, because I'm actually going to refer to them a couple times. These websites are interesting because they refer to each other. There's other websites out there where there's best practices emerging, but I just picked these two for simplicity, and in some senses I think they may be like the tip of the iceberg. The AJAX pattern site talks a lot about some design principles and then gives some really specifics about how to implement those design principles. And the usability guidelines has some really good stuff about how AJAX can make sites easier, how AJAX can make sites harder. And there's like 3 things that I just think are about AJAX that come out from these, which are just taken as a given before we talk about Windows Live Local. And the first thing, the first kind of given, is that there's really a difference between a website and a web application. So if you have a collection of documents, all the best practices for delivering those websites, for delivering navigation, just leave it alone. Users know how to use that. They know how to get to the content. So, but if it's a web application, then you need to start thinking about designing it in a different way. Of course, naturally, the heart of AJAX is that you can just update a little bit at a time, just a little bit of the site at a time, or a little bit of the pages of the site. It's kind of a given, I think. And finally, one of the other things that comes out of here is that all your past experience as a designer, all your years in the trenches working on rich client apps, websites, all that still matters. Conventions still matter. Good design still matters. Like AJAX is not going to free anybody of the obligation to work hard on their designs. So now let me get to start talking about our lessons from the trenches in Windows Live Local. So I'm going to talk about 6. I just kind of call them lessons learned. And I'm just going to dive into them, talk about them one at a time, and then show you some of the design solutions in Windows Live Local or in other products. So the first lesson learned is about providing feedback. This is about providing immediate feedback to the user on the client, right? So whatever the user does, just because you can update just a little part of the page, you still need to give the user immediate feedback that something worked. In the AJAX practices world, the AJAX patterns world, they call this local event handling. So if I could go over to the demo, I can give some examples of that. So here I am in Windows Live Local, and this is, as you can see, a map-based website, and we're looking at some of our wonderful satellite imagery that's overlaid with some labels, so you can get some context, see that we're looking at Las Vegas, and it's this kind of beautiful emerald jewel in the middle of this beautiful desert area. And I'm just going to do a typical thing that a user will do. We'll see them go in here and search for the place where they're staying, in this case, the Venetian Hotel. Now, you notice when I hit the Enter button, of course, we're sending that data to the server and getting it back. But we don't wait for the data to come back before we do something. We immediately pop up the search results. So you see how that comes up? It says loading, and then it comes back. If we didn't do that, the site would seem laggy. You know, on the back end or server architecture, they put a ton of work into making it go fast. So why give users an experience that feels laggy, right? Just by popping on the client immediately, we can give that sense of snappiness. The site feels richer and more interactive. Let me add him to my scratch pad real quick, because I'm going to show you another example of why this is also important. So it's not just that it's laggy. We also found in some of our usability studies it could be downright confusing. So let me use our drive to feature. And let's say I want to see, could I just drive here instead of fly? So I'm going to put in the directions pane, my home address here. Oops. Caps lock key. Okay, so I happen to know that it's going to take a while to compute this, but the users might not know. So what we saw in the lab, in the usability lab, when we hit the Get Directions button, we didn't necessarily do anything right away. Right? The first time we implemented it, we forgot about this immediate feedback principle. And as you can see, it takes a while to compute. Users got very confused. So it wasn't just that the site seemed laggy, it was confusing. They'd hit the Get Directions button a couple times, which of course would make it take even longer. So we added that Getting Directions string inside the directions summary pane while we were waiting for the directions to come back. So that is the basic principle of providing instant feedback. Now, if I could go to the slides for a sec, talk about the next related principle, which is about prediction. So if you can predict what the users are going to do, you can enrich their experience by just getting a little bit ahead for them. So let me show you what I mean there, if I can go back to the demo. So this notion of predicting and caching in the AJAX patterns, they refer to this in different ways. They call it, predictive download. They call it local cache. So I'm going to go back here again. I'm going to zoom to the street level, as users might do. And now we see a lot of users will drag the map around. They'll discover they can drag the map around. They want to look around. So I'm going to drag the map in Windows Live Local. And as you can see, I get a very smooth experience. That the images, I don't get like big black spots or anything waiting for the images. The reason that this happens is because this map that you see here is actually a series of about 200 by 200, I think, separate images, 200 by 200 pixel images. And so, since we can predict that the user is going to drag the map around, we actually bring down images that surround the map in the outside area. So, then when users drag and then stop, we bring down more images. So we always are predicting and caching locally more images. So that predicting and caching can really give your site a snappier feel, a smoother feel. But there's some other reasons to predict and cache. One of them, for instance, is just like ease of use and accuracy. So let me show you my Yahoo Mail account, for instance. If they use a predict model here to help me type my email addresses. So like if I want to send an email to my wife, her last name's Urban, so I just hit the U, and it gives me all the urbans that are in my contact books. And this is very helpful to me because not only is it faster, because now I don't have to type her whole email address, I can just pick that. It's also a lot more accurate. So they've increased my speed and my accuracy by predicting what I'm going to do. Let me show you another favorite site. Just as an aside, one thing that I've learned as a user experience professional is that monkeys are just inherently entertaining. And so here's a Flickr slideshow of monkeys, and they use the principle of predicting in a really simple but compelling way, is that they can assume in a slideshow that you're going to go to the next image. So they don't wait for me to click the button. The image is already there. So, and now they're, I'm sure, in the background caching the next one, and I click it. So I just get this immediate snappiness. I never have to think. I never have to wait. Now, you also notice if I go fast and I get ahead, did you see how they popped up that they pop up that little progress indicator? So they also apply the principle of giving immediate feedback on the client. So if they can't cache, at least they show me right away that that my click on that forward button had some effect. Okay, so if you could see the next slide, that was the principle of predicting caching. The next one, can I see the slide? Okay, the next one is about preserving user state. And this is very important in the rich internet application age. The reason this is important is because your rich internet applications are going to draw people in and invite them to invest in your app. They're going to be modeling. They're going to be iterating. They're going to be dragging. They're going to be dropping. They're going to be configuring. And if they invest time in your application, you need to honor that investment by saving their work. And this is something that people have come to expect on their main rich client applications. In the AJAX usability sites, they call this instant save, right? Whenever the user does something meaningful, you save it. Let me give you some examples of how important this could be. So back on my demo, if you look at my live local site, say I know there's a Apple store nearby. And so I search for it. Okay, there's the Apple store. I add this to my scratch pad. I close this. You can imagine that as a user, it might have actually taken me a lot of exploration, a lot of iteration to get to that state. Well, guess what? Things happen. I could accidentally close the browser. I could go away, and my wife could come in, do something, and then close the browser. And so I really want to know that I can get back there. So let me say, did I lose all my work? I'll go to livelocal.com, and we'll see that when we get back, it saved my scratchpad entries. It saved where I was. So now as a user, I feel that that was worth it for me to invest my time and energy into the site because Windows Live Local honored my investment by preserving my user state. So if we could go to the next slide, we just talked about preserving user state. And the next principle that we found is very much related. This is the ability to share user state. So this is about making sure that when users invest in an application and they achieve something or they find something of value, that they can share that with other people or they can go back to it later even. So if we go back to Windows Live Local, I'll give you a little demo of how we took care of that there. So here I'm in Windows Live Local, and let me do some things that we might see users do. So here I am on the scratch pad. I'm looking at the Venetian Hotel, and I notice, there's bird's eye imagery available. Let me see what that is. Oh, okay, so I'm looking at it up close. That's a neat view of it. Let me look at it from the east. Oh, neat. Okay, there's the Venetian. This is a shot of the Venetian that I like. Maybe, I want to send to my wife, hey, here's a cool picture of where we're staying. Well, what am I going to send her? Am I going to send her a list of instructions to get back here? Am I going to say, not do anything on Windows Live Local until I get home and let her use my own application? Well, what we did was we borrowed the permalink notion from the blogosphere. So if you click on the permalink button, what you see is a link comes up that we build that will preserve that user state so you can share it. You can email it, you can bookmark it, You can save it. You can copy it to your clipboard. So we were careful to, even though we made an AJAX experience, a rich internet experience, that you could still save user state and you could share that user state. So the next principle, if we could look at the slides. So we were just talking about sharing user state. The next principle is a sort of an extension of that. And I refer to this as making controls. Some people call it documenting APIs or sharing APIs. And the notion here is that there's other designers out there. This is the Web 2.0. There's other developers out there. There's JavaScript. There are people who are going to want to take the experiences that you made, that you're delivering customers, and change them, extend them, mix it up. And you want to let people mix it up. You're going to get a lot more user value out of your site if people can take it and do things that maybe you never really imagined. So if we can go back to the, my demo machine. I'll show you just a couple of examples of how that's, what that's meant to us. So this whole main area on Windows Live Local that you see here, we built into something that we call the map control. And we also built something we call the URL API, which is basically just a simple way to pass parameters on the URL to configure Windows Live Local the way you want. So there's a website that you can go up to. It's a community website called Via Virtual Earth. And they have a gallery of all kinds of things that people have done to take Windows Live Local and extend and exchange the experience and deliver experiences that we never would have done, we never would have thought of. And I'll show you like a really simple one. So this is a very low-tech solution that's incredibly valuable. If you live in Seattle and you have kids, there's a good chance that every Saturday you're going to a kid's soccer game somewhere. And it's always at a different field. You never know what it is. So somebody out there looked at Windows Live Local and said, you know what, I think I can help people out. They built this website called King County Soccer. And all it does is creates these links. They use the URL API to just drive the links to where you want to go. So here's the Alki soccer field. Nice, I see the soccer field. And now I can use all the richness of Windows Live Local. I got driving directions there to search for things around there, like I could search for a coffee shop there or something if I didn't actually want to sit through the 10-year-old soccer game. So what's so exciting to the Windows Live Local team about this is we never would have thought of a Seattle soccer field finder feature. But we didn't have to because people could just take our experience and extend it in new and interesting ways. Here's another quick example that I just think is cool. This is this company. They just took all of our features and just reskinned it. This is a little harder to do. They're calling into our JavaScript control and whatnot. But we just love the fact that you can go get a different look and feel and go do things in a little different ways. There's other sites that have taken other data, data from Amazon and put it on maps and combined data in really interesting ways. So there's a lot of mashups that are happening on the site. And that's because we were careful to make sure that we made controls and that we documented our APIs. So if we could go to the next slide. There's one last lesson that we learned from a bitter experience as designers that I want to share with you guys. And this is how important it is to just be very vigilant about keeping your presentation logic and keeping your implementation logic separate. It's very easy to take a shortcut here and there and start mixing in a little style with your markup right here. Gets it done, you get to go home by 5 or whatnot. So just to give you a little history on Windows Live Local, when we started out, we were this website actually called Virtual Earth. And we thought it was a really cool website, and you could do a lot of cool stuff with it. You could do some neat searching, and we really liked the look and feel that we came up with. So, for instance, I can search for cocktails. I'll add one of these guys to my scratch pad. Maybe I'll get a little drill down on something in my scratch pad here. So if you notice, if you've got a designer's eye, that some of the UI in this particular version has a slightly different look and feel, slightly different branding elements. That's because after we released Virtual Earth, we thought, wow, it would be really cool if we were part of this Windows Live phenomenon that's happening. How cool would that be? So you can see that they had a slightly different branding strategy, slightly different look and feel. And there were a couple places where we had a little bit of the presentation logic not well separated out into our CSS. So in this particular version, we're in kind of a transitionary period, and it's not going to be until the next version that we can do the full look and feel of the Windows Live site. We're still in beta, so you know it's a typical beta experience, I think. But I don't want you guys to have to learn the same lesson through bitter experience. So if I could go back to the slides, I will briefly review our 6 lessons learned from the...
Do you have a second? Are you busy? Because I just been backstage, and I've been working on this app. I thought maybe you could help me out with it. Do you have a second now? Or?
Yeah, so you're saying you were writing an app backstage.
Yeah, of course.
And now you want me to help you iterate on it.
Yeah.
That's a believable scenario.
I thought so.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's bring it up here. Do we have it? So, yeah, this is the app I was writing. So this is sort of an e-commerce site for selling.
Hey, Brad,
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt.
Okay.
I'm going to stop you right there.
All right.
I want to see the site, want to see what it does,
Okay.
but I just got through talking how important the look and feel of your site is, right? I mean,
yeah.
What could be more critical than your experience than the look and feel of your site?
I see, I see.
So I thought I asked Karina to give you a hand with this.
Oh, yeah, you know, Karina, she sent me this designer on our team, right? She sent me this CSS file. Is CSS going to be a big thing, you think?
It might catch on.
Okay, CSS might be big.
Okay.
So let me bring that up. So I'm going to use Visual Studio 2005. It's a shipping product. You got copies of it in your bags today, and we actually have Visual Studio 2005 Web Developer Express, which is a free version. You can download it. Anybody can download it off the web, and everything that I'm going to do today, you can do in that Express version, like apply a style sheet like that. So what do you think?
Well, let's see the site.
Let's see what it looks like. I'm just going to save it and hit refresh, and we'll see how well that works. So, what do you think? It's getting there, huh?
Yeah, that looks a lot nicer. That looks like Karina's work all right.
Yeah, so let me just do a search. So what this site is, you know, we're in Vegas and everything, and I was thinking, you know, what do we see all the time in Vegas? You know, I notice whenever the hotel guys give us directions, no matter where you're going, you go through the casino and then over to the, have you noticed that? And so what I thought might be good is a good e-commerce site for selling dice. I thought, you know, I think I can make a little money here on the side selling dice. So I got some inventory of some dice, and now I'm selling this. So I'll be taking venture capital money after the show. So
it's brilliant. I love it.
What do you think? You like the site?
Well, so what'd you do? You did a search.
I did a search for dice, and then I
got dice down here.
Yep.
Okay, so I see a few of the principles that we just talked about that we should apply to it.
Okay.
Before we do that, I do have some essential, just basic usability feedback.
Okay.
So those dice at the bottom are those things users can buy?
Right, yeah, they're the search results from coming in there.
Yeah, so typically if the user can buy something, you communicate that to them by putting the price on it.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Do you just want to take a note about that? I'm sure it's going to take you a...
Actually, with Visual Studio 2005, the Express edition here, what I can do is I can go into this set of data-bound controls, and I can do template editing, so I can edit just one of those items in a very easy kind of way. So I'm going to go in and do edit template, and so now it's showing me just that one item. So what I'm going to do is drag a label control onto that guy, and then set its data binding properties. So in here, I'm just going to type eval. This gets the data out of the database, and then I store the price in the database. And then knowing you, Rick, you're kind of you want the thing printed out with 2 decimal places, currency symbol, all that kind of stuff. So it's super easy to go do that with this standard .NET string formatting thing.
You worked with me before. I like the preemptive strike. Okay,
yeah, I knew you were going to, might as well just go ahead and put that in. Just make sure that all looks good. And then hit save on there, and then we'll just refresh the site. And now, let's see, do we have dice? This will be good. Oh, look at this. So let me tell you about the debugging experience we have with Visual Studio 2005. This is I have a problem on line 82 here. Oh, yeah, thank you. Who told me I typed eval wrong? Good job, good job. So I'm gonna show you how easy it is to debug that thing. This was not planned, as Rick is sweating up here, wondering whether I'm gonna fix it. So it told me the actual line of code that was wrong, and it told me that
Value.
Yeah, eValue. That's actually not.
That
right.
was hot. So it just told you what line
Yeah,
on
so
the
it's
server.
the debugging. And if you've never used Visual Studio, the way it works is I'm using the. I'm not using IIS. I'm using the. We call it Cassini, or the web developer version of IIS, or it's actually a different code base. And it on my local machine gives me all that kind of rich data to be able to debug. So.
You see if it worked.
Now you actually want to see if it works, don't you? I knew that. So look at that, and the prices are right down there, kind of printed all
And
nice.
so you didn't have to have IIS installed.
Right. So yeah. So it comes with Visual Studio, ASP.NET development server, and it.
So that's pretty cool. So that'll make it a lot easier for people to.
Yeah, it's super easy. You know, you don't have to have a full-on install. You can just install Express.
But they do have
and get
to,
all of it.
So you don't have to buy Visual Studio?
No, Visual Studio Express Edition, free on the web. You can just go get that and download it. It works great. So now, what do you think? We about ready to ship this site, or?
We're getting there, but let's apply a couple of the principles that we talked about. So first, I started out talking. I don't know if you were listening, but I started out talking.
I was working on the app back there.
Some of the, the heart of AJAX is about getting rid of the full page refresh, right?
Yep.
Just
Oh, I
one page
see.
at a
I
time.
see. I
So
think a couple of people mentioned that full page refresh. So
Right.
they're annoyed at my site right now. I don't think I like that. So we should we should probably go fix that.
And then now, yeah, okay, get that fixed.
So I'm going to come in here, and so this first page is so far it's an ASP.NET 2.0 page, just like you might have a ton of today. And we're just going to go in and use a couple of server-side controls for the next part of this demo. And I have a very helpful comments here that tells me where to put this stuff. So we're going to come in here and put an update panel. And you might have seen some of this in the keynote or in another talk, but it's a super interesting thing to do. So what the update panel does is I just give it an ID, and I set its content template. I wrap all of the stuff in my existing page, or that big view of the dice and the small view, the search results. I wrap all of that up in the content template, and then I set a couple of triggers. And the way the triggers work is any event that comes back from those triggers. I have the search button and that search text box. And I have the set of events. So any of those events that happens will trigger the update panel to kick in. And instead of doing a full page post back, it'll go use XML HTTP to go up to the server, render the page on the server, and then bring back just the delta, just the part that changed. And it'll dynamically update the DHTML tree that's in there. So I should probably put the end tags on there before I forget. And I see I have this nice statement completion here that kind of helps me out, as I'm not a fabulous typer. And actually, we'll start up in a new browser here. So now, when I do a search for dice in here, you notice I don't get a full page refresh.
Yep.
You see, there's no kind of big blinky thing action happening
All right,
there.
so now you've got the.
What do you guys think? Is that solve a problem you have today? Okay, good.
So.
So you guys like it, but Rick still doesn't like it.
Well, hold on. So first, I got a question about what did you have to do to your existing tags to make the update panel work?
Yeah, so the beautiful thing is, it literally is an ASP.NET 2.0 site that I made no changes to. I just wrapped the HTML in the page. I wrapped it as the content template. I just kind of put the header and footer on there, and ASP.NET does the rest.
So it was all your existing tags, and they just
everything
work with
existing tags.
Right.
Yep.
So that's cool. I like it because you got sort of the heart of AJAX, which is now you're just refreshing that part. But now let's talk a little bit, get a little more detailed about some of the actual lessons that we learned. As you click on the dice, I noticed there's a little hesitancy between before when the dice show up. It makes your site seem like a little laggy. I could also imagine you're running off your machine. So I'm guessing if it's really on the internet, it could go slower, it could during the Super Bowl or something, when the internet's real hot, it'll go a little slower.
Right, okay. So you want to show some immediate user response to indicate things are happening.
Apply the principle of immediate feedback.
Immediate feedback. Well, as you might guess, we have another ASP.NET server-side control that allows us to do that. It's called update progress. Just make sure I put the thing in the right place here. Yeah. So with this update progress control that I just stuck on there, you see it's pretty simple. It just Atlas : update progress, and then there's a progress template in there. And in there, within that progress template, again, I can put any ASP.NET markup that I want to go put. And in this case, the main thing I'm doing is doing the kind of fun animated GIF that Karina made for us.
Oh, okay.
So if I just hit save on that and then refresh this page and do my search again, you see that nice little animated GIF?
Is that a little girl rolling dice?
Yeah, a little girl rolling dice there. So you kind of gives you a much more snappy feel to the site, like stuff's actually happening there.
Exactly.
So maybe I could show you another kind of dice here. There's what's your favorite game? Like maybe Uno or something?
Sure, why not?
Oh, wait a second. So that didn't work. So.
So what happened? Did you mistype?
Yeah, I kind of fat fingered that thing. I'm not getting anything.
All right. Well, that's incredibly convenient because it brings up the next point, which is we were talking about predicting what the user's going to do, and that can help actually users discover more dice on your site, and also help their accuracy and help their speed. It'll be faster to type in the dice that they want, and they'll make less errors typing it in. So I assume it'd be a pretty time-consuming process, but you should take a bug down that you should do some kind of autocomplete.
Oh, I see. So you want to make this text box an autocomplete text box.
Exactly. Like, remember, did you see what they do on Yahoo Mail?
Yeah, I saw those Yahoo guys. Is somebody from Yahoo here? Anybody from Yahoo? Nobody's claiming. I wonder how long it took them to implement that. Let's see how long it takes me. So.
Them's fighting words.
Oh, bring it on after. Okay, so actually the first thing I want to show you is I actually have a AJAX, a SOAP-based web service, just like we support with ASP.NET 2.0 today, called getCompletionList. It takes some prefix and a number of characters, and what it does is this is simple database logic. Actually, the database for this app goes against SQL Express, which is basically a free version of the full SQL Server product that you're able to use for your own development and kind of web-based apps. So it's really simple, just kind of your standard data access code here. And so what I wanted to show you is kind of how to call this web service.
Okay.
So let's look real quick at how you might call that thing. Just make sure I get the name of this thing right. Yep. So if you just hit the web service directly from the browser, you get a nice sort of debugging experience there, and you can come and test out the thing. So if I do a prefix of B and a count of 1, we'll see all the items in the database that begin with B. See that? So, and it's a nice, beautiful XML, which I'm sure you love to parse the XML on the client.
Yeah, I was going to say, I find that me and most of my friends are kind of shying away a little bit from the XML, the parsing, the loading the DOM and everything. So, I mean,
so what do you like? You're not an XML fan. What do you like?
So to be honest, we've been using JSON, and so
JSON, yeah, that's the
JavaScript object notation. We can just take something back from the server, evaluate it in one line of JavaScript, and then start JavaScripting against it.
Well, we've noticed that JavaScript's sort of a big thing. So what we've done with Atlas is we've augmented the existing web services support. When you hit a web service with /JS now, we actually return, this is JSON notation, this is some JavaScript, that what it does is it creates a method. It's JavaScript code that'll create a method that calls that web service, and then the web service, instead of returning XML, returns JSON back to the client. So if you connect a sniffer up to the thing, you can see that it's JSON coming back down to the client.
So I can just evaluate this in one line of JavaScript,
and
then evaluate the results of what would it be? get completion
Yeah,
list
this
method
gets
in another
completion list method.
line of JavaScript, and I'm ready to go. I have my object loaded up,
Absolutely.
and I can just start partying on it.
Absolutely,
Nice.
but you know, I think that's still a little, you know, you could do that if you wanted to, but I think that's still just a little bit too complicated, you know, because there's a few set of things that are super common, like this autocomplete thing, that we wanted to make it even easier. So what we've done is we've encapsulated that, of course, in a ASP.NET server-side control. So let's take a look at what that might look like. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to use the autocomplete extender. And what it does is it connects up to that web service we just looked at. You see it uses searchcomplete.asmx, and it's going to call that thing with the /js. And then it hooks up to that text1, that's my search text box, and it wires those two things together and handles all the drop down and auto select magic that you would think. Whoops. Which side am I? Okay. So now let's refresh this page, and we'll see when I start typing if I get that data back. You see it autocompletes there. So with just a couple of lines of markup code and the web service that I already had, it's super easy to go.
So you didn't have to write any JavaScript.
Yeah.
And that's going to really help your users out. They'll be able to type a lot faster and also a lot more accurately. They'll get a lot fewer zero results because they'll make many fewer mistakes typing in the search result.
Yep. So I think a lot of people can now use autocomplete where they couldn't before because the barrier to entry was too high.
Cool.
What do you think, autocomplete fans? Anyone? Okay. Good? Making sure you're still there with us.
We have the anti-autocomplete audience.
Yeah. So what I think is the best thing is once you found the dice you like about this site, once you found the dice you like, you can go and configure the dice and really kind of trick the dice out and make them be kind of exactly what you want. So I can come in and change the color of those dice, and then I have this nice accordion control that gives me this kind of nice sort of animations as I change that. I can change the color, and then my favorite thing I can do is come in and change the texture. So I get the nice marble texture, the nice wood texture.
Oh, I like the wood ones.
The wood's pretty good. And then, of course, I can come in here and change the view to make sure I look at this dice and all the different configurations that it's got.
Could you do that view change thing again? How do you do that so fast? I mean, it must take a while to render those on the server.
Well, you know, I was listening to there's this really kind of wise designer that was talking about predicting and caching recently. So I was listening to this guy, right? So we do a little predict and cache action here. So let me show you the images in this site in my image library. I'll just show you a couple of these. Let me just bring this thing up. And you can see this is my green dice with white spots here. And basically what it is an image strip. So we're doing some predicting and caching and say, look, if you want one view of this dice, you probably want the whole thing. So what we do is we just bring down that whole, this whole row of dice. And then as you change the view, we just have a window that we're just sliding that dice over.
Nice. And so did you have a developer write that up as a control or something like that?
Yeah, so what we did, and I can show you an example in just a second, but we had actually had a developer on the team, Bertrand, who I think is here, kind of wrote a nice control for doing that. And then I was able to just within markup apply it to the right places. And we'll see an example in just a minute.
Nice.
So,
I also noticed that I see a familiar looking feature up there. Can you show me what happens when you do permalink?
Oh yeah, so
see, it's going to be important to let users share their user state.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can imagine if you spend a long time tricking out the dice, users might want to say send it to their friend or maybe send it to the boss. Are these the right dice? Can we buy these dice?
Absolutely. So you click on the permalink thing and you get this dialogue. You might recognize
it. Looks familiar, yeah.
So I think that's a core principle of Web 2.0 that you kind of plagiarism is the highest form of flattery. So this is very similar to the dialogue off Live Local that I was able to work on last night. So I kind of got that up. And then you can just click on this URL, and you see it brings the whole URL in there, and I can share it with you. I could send it to you. I can say, what do you think about my red dice with white spots? And
Well, actually, probably not, because at home I actually don't use Internet Explorer. I use Firefox.
Use Firefox at home. Well, you know, it turns out browser compatibility was one problem somebody mentioned, and one of the core advantages of Atlas is that it has a browser compatibility layer that allows you, makes it much easier to write websites that work cross-browser. So if I just paste that, that's the exact URL that I just got out of there, I paste that thing in, and I get the red dots with white spots exactly the way we had configured it.
Looks exactly the same.
Yeah, and then, of course, this site, you know, works just fine because it's built on top of Atlas, which has that common browser compat layer.
Right. Can I ask you a question about your permalink there?
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about how you made that pop-up? Because I've seen those.
Yeah.
Like, that's a way that you can give like a really snappy user experience, and I've seen those show up a lot.
Yeah, totally. Let's take a look at what the pop-up looks like. So the page we first saw, that default, that ASPX page, that was a server-driven page. It was server-side logic, and we just used update panel to give kind of an AJAX look and feel. For other parts of your site, you're going to want to do full-on client access and only go back up to the server to get data. And that's what we're showing with this page. So the way this page is laid out is it has a section that's just a bunch of div tags in there that give the basic structure of the site, and then some XML, what we're calling XML script, so text XML script, or Atlas script. You might see it in the docs. And the XML script applies the behavior to those divs. So if we go back up here to the pop-up, you can see all the pop-up is. We have this show config. All it is this div right here that I'm highlighting. That's the pop-up UI. All it contains in there is a couple of hrefs, some text that we're going to want to put in there. And so what I can do is I'll show you the XML script for it. So all I did down here in the XML script is I have a control called config pop-up. That's the same ID we just saw there. And then I have a behavior to it. And out of the box, Atlas ships a set of behaviors. One of the behavior is a pop-up behavior, but there's a whole extensible platform that you can use to go write your own behaviors. We think third parties will go in and add those. So this is a behavior you can apply to a div. And all it does is it gives us that pop-up behavior so that when I call it, it's bound to that permalink. When I click on that, I show this pop-up behavior. So then, you know, we also have the HTML. You know, if we come in here and look at here, you notice that this link has to change based on the data that's available. So as I change each one of these, the permalink has to change, obviously, to match what's there. And the way we get that working is very cool, I think, as well. So the way that works is, let me just go back up here and show you the div that it's on. So I have this div called permalink text, and that's the div that displays that text. And you can see I've set its href to be nothing. And what we're going to do is show some data binding. So here, what we're doing is setting a couple of binding properties on that div. We're saying the text property of the div, get its value from this dice config class, and the permalink property on the dice config class. And the navigate URL, the same thing. That makes the URL and the text be identical. So what you might be wondering is, where do you get this dice config class and how that looks like? So let's take a look at that. So I know there are some people in here that love JavaScript and love working in that environment, and you still can. In fact, I think we've made it a lot easier to do that. So in this dice, we come in here to this dice config class, and you can see this is the get permalink property. This is the permalink property. So it might not look exactly like the JavaScript that you're used to, because one of the things we've done with Atlas is we've used the standard JavaScript extension mechanisms to provide an object-oriented development environment for JavaScript. So in particular, we've used things like closures to be able to provide a notion of properties and events so that I can raise property change events, a notion of components, a notion of interfaces and classes and things that you've come to expect out of an object-oriented development environment. And what that does is it allows me to do something like programmatically have this property, and then in the XML script, I can data bind to it. One thing that I think is going to be super common with this is you'll have some set of people on your team that are really the XML script experts, and they can go write a set of reusable components in JavaScript and give you a JavaScript library like this. And then other people on your team can just use a combination of CSS, divs, and this XML script to be able to wire those things up to make a really compelling site.
So it seems like you have some kind of state maintenance features that we can use to apply that principle of letting users share the state that they built up. But I do have a piece of feedback about your site.
Okay.
Like I imagine we may see like users go through a lot of effort to configure it.
Yeah, you know, I've tricked this one out exactly the way I want it.
You could totally imagine you go get a cup of coffee, a colleague comes, sits down, does something else on your computer, closes the window, and you've lost your investment in your dice configurator. So you probably should need to go back at some point, add some way of preserving that user state.
Yeah, actually, you know, it's super simple to do that. So I think what you're saying is actually just come in here and close this browser.
It says purple dice with black dots.
Purple dice, black dots.
Okay.
Okay, so we close the browser down. I can open the thing back up. And now I'm just going to put in just the URL back to the configurator, so you get the user back to your site. And look, you give them exactly that, exactly the same data. And and this would actually work on any browser. It would work if I configured the dice in my office and then went home and went back to the site. It would give me the exact same results that I had up at the server.
So these aren't just cookies that you're saving.
It's not just cookies. We're actually leveraging some services out of ASP.NET 2.0 called the profile service. So you want to take a look at how that?
Maybe. I imagine it's probably pretty complicated.
Actually, it's super easy to go do. So
do I have to like set up a table with all the user data and all the users in it, and get my DB admin to...
So this works exactly like it does with ASP.NET 2.0. And so what you do is in your web config file for your project, you set up this profiles area where you just specify the name of the schema, basically, the name of the field and the type of the name of the field here and the type you're going to store there. And then under the covers, we use a database and store that. And of course, there's a provider model, so you could store it in any data store that you wanted to. But I'm just using the default one here. And then what we've done with it, that's ASP.NET 2.0. And then what we've done with Atlas is that we've exposed that via the web services stuff we just looked at a few minutes ago. We've exposed AJAX web services, and then we kind of wrapped that with JSON so that you can actually access this from the client in a super easy way.
So you just can call, like write a little JavaScript, you mean, to...
Yeah, so one thing we could go look at is in this dice configurator here.
This is the JavaScript for that dice configurator
That's
page?
right. So this is JavaScript, runs on the client. You'll notice a couple of things. So this is the initialize or the constructor for so when the page first loads, this constructor gets called. And what we're doing here is we call this sys.profile.loaded. And so sys.profile is part of Atlas. And what we do is we say load up the profile. So it goes up to the server via a JSON call and gets that profile data that's there and brings it back down to the client. And of course, you know, it does this in an asynchronous way because this is AJAX, and that's what the A and the AJAX about. So you call load, and then when the load is complete, it calls this on profile load complete. And this is where I think is very cool. In the sys.profile, I call this properties method and property. And now you notice I have strongly typed access to name, base color, dot color, and texture. I can actually refer to them programmatically within here in a strongly typed way. And you can see how that helps the debugging and making sure you're makes it much more readable than doing everything with quotes and whatever.
So if I understand it correctly, I write a little markup in that config file.
Yep.
And then I can just write, looks like 2 lines of JavaScript to ask for the configuration, and then just a few lines, depending on how many properties I have, I guess.
Yep.
To set the page up based on that. So what about, like, I think probably like every significant user action, you want to auto-save that state? preserve that user state?
So one of the things I mentioned is we have properties and events. So we have this raise change method within here. And what we're doing is every time someone sets one of those properties, we raise a change notification so that the data binding within the HTML page works. And also within there, what we're doing is we're setting the value on each one of those. We're updating it with the property call. So we make sure that the profile store is always up to date. And then that's all a local client action. It just stores it kind of locally there. And then I can call this profile.save, which does an asynchronous call up to the server to go update the server. So right now I'm doing one of these save calls on every user action. You could imagine governing that, doing it on a timer based on the load that you want to have.
Maybe
on the
some
server.
things you don't want to auto-save, but you want to let the user save. You could imagine you could have a button on that calls this code and maybe give them a little save graphic so they know that it's saving.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so I just have one more question about your site. One of the principles that we talked about in Windows Live Local and that we see as a big part of Web 2.0 is this ability to mix it up. Like people might see some like controls on your site, some of your data. Like I saw you could get to the JSON, and but how could I, use your site? Like take the parts and maybe I could mix it. Maybe if I have some other site that I want to mix dice in with it.
Yep. Well, there's sort of two important ways that we can go do that. One is that all the controls that you've seen, like this kind of view changing control, this accordion control we call it, and then this is actually a picker control we wrote. All those controls are built on top of this rich Atlas framework, and so they're available. They're generalized and available for reuse on your site. So you can just grab those controls and go use it. And then in a more kind of Web 2.0-ish kind of way, you can certainly go take the data that you have here, go expose it via other mechanisms. And if I give a plug here for a talk later today, I'll put it up there, or later tomorrow, on how to build mashups using Atlas. They're going to talk about exactly how to go do that.
Well, Brad, I hope feedback was useful.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So are you ready to invest in my company here, selling these dice? You think purple dice with black dots is going to be sort of a big seller, or?
I think we should talk after we have maybe a couple drinks later tonight.
Okay,
but
yeah, sure, that sounds good.
I got to say, I feel like we kind of only scratched the surface of the power that Atlas has, the flexibility, but it seemed like it would be pretty easy for me to use Atlas to deliver some of the experiences that I'm worried about, that I'm thinking about now. But as you saw, there's a lot of other designers in the room.
Yep.
What if they wanted to tell you what experiences they care about? How do they get the Atlas team to know what they're trying to do?
Well, we would love to hear from you. That's why we're actually here at the conference, is we want to get your feedback on what control extenders we need to have, what are common behaviors that you see across all your sites, what kind of things should we build, what should we partner with some third parties to go build. So we have a couple of sessions here, and then we're in the sandbox with the lab, so please come by and talk to us. So, thanks. Can we
go back to the slides? There may be some reference information on the slides, huh?
Yeah, you hit the slides real quick.
All right, hold on. We just did that.
Yeah, so a couple of things after Mix. I want to point out that the very cool controls that you saw today, Bertrand wrote those, and over the next week he's going to go and blog out exactly how that accordion control was implemented and how the picker control was implemented, so you can kind of quench your thirst for that. And he'll make the source code available so you can use them on your sites. And then, more importantly, you can learn about how to build your own controls.
Can I style that accordion control?
Absolutely. Okay. It's all done with the CSS.
Good to
funness.
Hear. So I think...
so a couple more things. So I encourage you to engage with us up on the atlas.asp.net site. We just did a big revamp of that site at the start of the show. So please go up there on the forums. We're going to be hanging out there looking for your feedback. I talked about Visual Studio Express today as a sort of free web download. I also want to point out for the designers in the audience, we're going to shortly be shipping our Expression product, and that is a tool specifically for web designers to go build this kind of site. We're very interested in the designer-developer workflow. And having just built this designer-heavy app, I can say I can't wait until we have the developer-designer workflow working great, and Expression is going to be a key part of that.
All right. I think Let's see.
And then here, just want to point out a couple of sessions. The first couple, I think we've already talked about. The very last one, building programmable components, that's the mashup talk that Nikhil is going to be giving, so I encourage you to go to that. And one more slide.
Okay. Could do another slide. All right.
Do one more, though.
One more after this? Okay. Can
press
people,
on.
okay.
Press on one more.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to mention the session evaluations. This is the first time we're doing Mix. We're trying a bunch of different things, so we'd love to get your feedback. So if you go up on ComNet there, you can give feedback on our presentation and how Mix is going in general. We'd really value that feedback. I think there's something in it for you. For every session, we're going to give away one of these Zen MP3 players. So it should be good.
Those look nice, huh?
So should we take a few questions?
Yeah, I think we have time. So are there any questions? I guess we could just take them from the mics.
No questions?
Yeah.
Oh, there's one, yeah. Okay.
Number 2.
Yeah, you kind of lost me a bit on the state thing. Can you explain how you do that again, where I can go home and go to a different computer and still see the same dice? Second part is, if I can do that, why do you do such a complicated permalink?
Okay. So the first part is I didn't do a great job explaining the saving the state. What we do is every time you go through and select the color that you want, we go and call the profile service, the ASP.NET profile service, just by saying sys.profile.properties.color gets 12 or red or whatever. And when I do that and I call save, then it does a web services call from your client up to the server. And on the server side, it stores in a user-centric location, it stores the preference that you just set up. And then next time when you go back to the site, what I do is go back and look at what the last setting was. I kind of suck that down and set it. So does that make sense for that one? What's the identity mechanism? Very good. So on this side, you notice I didn't have a login system at all. So it does do identity based on cookies for this site, but it plugs into the ASP.NET kind of login and identity mechanism. So if you do have a site where users can log in, you can store it based on that. Or if you're in a corporation, you can use NTLM and store information that way.
So you also had a question about the permalink.
Yeah, and then do you want to do it? Or?
Yeah, so the permalink is really about the sharing the user state, and that's permalinks are important, and because there's a difference. Maybe Brad wants to send me a set of dice and have me look at them, but then go on with his work, right? So he doesn't want me to have to log in as him to see his state. The other thing is he might want to bookmark a bunch of different dice and go back and look at them later. Another place where you'll see permalinks a lot and where you should apply them is anywhere where you're trying to let users share content that can change where it is on the site. So imagine a blogging site or a news site where like the front page story can get pushed off the bottom. So I don't want to have to send you a link to the New York Times and say, look at the front page story. Then you go back the next day and it's not the front page story you can't find anymore. I want to send you a link straight to that content. So that's the difference between the permalink and the saving the user state.
What if there are many web servers?
You mean if there's a server farm? Yes. The profile store works great over server farms. We can talk about the sort of details behind that. I mean, you just use the network load balancer and...
That's part of the ASP.NET.
It's part of ASP.NET. That has nothing to do with Atlas. It kind of is there and shipping today. But we can drill in more. And actually, I didn't mention it on the slide. Scott Guthrie has a talk tomorrow on building, or actually later today, on building an ASP.NET 2.0 app end-to-end. And he goes into this in some detail.
Is there any Atlas-enabled way of using the ASP.NET authentication service?
Yeah, that's a good question. Nikhil is going to talk a little bit about that. He actually has a client-side login control that goes against the authentication service. So there's nothing baked in to Atlas, but Nikhil has an example of that, and it'll be in his talk. I think we're still trying to figure out exactly what the client side should look like. So if you go to that talk tomorrow on building mashups, you'll see that.
And if you have any ideas about it, make sure you let these guys know so they do it right. Number 2?
Hi, Atlas looks really great, you know, and I know you guys just launched it yesterday.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm sort of wondering is how often do you expect it to be updated?
That's a good question. So we're working on kind of a very aggressive timeline with Atlas, and we expect every 6 or 8 weeks for there to be kind of a new thing as we, it might be small bug fixes, like I think the next set is going to be a small set of bug fixes that we hear from you guys as you kick the tires, and then the one after that might be a little bit bigger. But that's sort of the time frame we're looking at. And then we will be productizing it and shipping it in the Visual Studio Orcus release, which will be kind of mid-next year.
I've got a couple comments. I've been using Atlas since Scott showed it at the PDC,
Yeah.
and I've really seen it grown. It's hard as an engineer. It's because not only you're still doing ASP.NET development,
Yep.
but you're having to learn JSON. You've got to do this crazy Clojure JavaScript stuff.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're learning CSS at the same time. There's
Yep, yep.
a lot to learn to get
Yes.
behavior that our customers are going to expect pretty quickly.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, I don't see the learning curve going down because it's a pretty deep, rich platform. I can't believe you used the word rich.
Yeah, yes, yes.
I'm trying to erase that word. But anyway,
Yes.
yeah, it's good. But how do we get into this? I thought we wouldn't have to do JavaScript anymore.
Yes.
We started doing more server-oriented apps. So this
Yes.
kind of,
Well, I think there's two distinct audiences for Atlas, and I tried to show that in the demo. There's one just building. I know and love ASP.NET today. Just kind of make that better for me, and that's like first page where we talked about update panel, talked about the progress UI, all that kind of stuff. I think that you don't have to know JavaScript at all. You don't have to know that XML script stuff we looked at. You probably do have to know CSS, or you probably will for that side. And then there's the other side where I think we have customers today that frankly are not on ASP.NET. They're basically HTML, DHTML scripters, and they're kind of moving up. And so that XML script and that kind of, like you said, kind of crazy JavaScript stuff is really focused at that audience.
will we always be having to hand code that XML script? Because I think we may get IntelliSense
Right.
now. I'm not sure.
Right, yeah, so there's a little bit of IntelliSense, and so with the Orcus release, we are kind of well on the way of getting a tool story. So the next time we give this Atlas talk at a conference like this, we'll have a tool story for it. A whole development environment with a designer support that will have code-focused support for the client-side stuff like XML script and that JavaScript stuff, as well as really nice designer support for doing the server-side stuff.
Okay, last question. The code is going to be posted where again?
So I'll post the code for the whole demo at the atlas.asp.net site.
Okay.
And then on the other blog, that's where it'll be.
Thanks. That's a great demo. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi there. This is actually, in a way, a follow-on to the previous question. I'm curious what, if any, tools are on the horizon to extend into the area of client-side debugging with regards to JavaScript, which is a huge hole right now.
Did you ever find it frustrating to debug JavaScript? Like, anybody ever? Like,
yeah. So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things going on with that. One is I didn't demo it today, but you can actually set breakpoints and look at local variables and things like that. You kind of have to set up your machine in exactly the right way. So we're working on getting a blog post, white paper. You have to get the right QFE. So we're doing that for people today on Visual Studio 2005. And then in the future, I was talking about our web developer release for Orcus, and that is going to have some good, kind of much better support for that.
And would Bankman be a comparison in terms of functionality that would be able to talk about?
Yeah, I guess I'm not quite ready to go do a comparison right now. Maybe we can talk.
Yeah.
We can talk
and actually, just one more question here. The current state of Atlas, has it really kind of gone through most of the kind of fluctuations in terms of how things are being set up? It's kind of hard to understand exactly where it is in its life cycle right now.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think we've gotten the big feedback. So just some history. We announced Atlas at PDC kind of towards the end of last year, and we got the biggest piece of feedback, which is sort of resonating from what you folks are saying, which is the client-side model's kind of hard. Give us a server-side model. And that was sort of a big change for us. I think that's sort of the biggest. Although we're not ready to talk about it being compatible from release to release yet. I mean, just as I was building this demo, I found some things that I kind of like to change about it. I'm sure as you go in and build your apps, you'll find a few things. So I would say Atlas, it has a Go Live license. You're able to go use it today, but I wouldn't go rebuild your entire site in it quite yet. I go use it in some targeted spots, get some experience with it, understand it. And then we're going to do a real release, hopefully sometime this year, that we will give you compatibility support for. And I think that's the thing to watch for.
This is an experience question for Rick.
Okay.
One of the things that we see in live local, and in the wonderful DICE application, which, great job on that, by the way, in like 12 minutes. That was impressive. Is the decoupling of the application state from the address bar. And so that address bar is fixed.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm not really sure how people how they're going to really understand that, because we have sort of 10 years of users comprehending that there's this thing called the address bar, and I can copy and paste it and move it around. What's been your experience with the usability labs and your teams in understanding how users will work with that new paradigm?
Yeah. So let me just restate the problem just real quick. So basically, you'll notice a lot of these AJAX sites, like ours, the URL just stays the same no matter what you do. Like on a typical site, as you make changes, the URL will say, okay, you're on this page, you're on this page, you're on this page. But on sites like Windows Live Local, it always just says Windows Live Local. It's one of the reasons we have to have the permalink functionality. You don't need a permalink button to share state if you can just bookmark it and know that you'll get back to that specific state. Now, some sites actually do update the URL, the way that they're implemented. They can keep the URL updated. So I think that from what I've seen with users, that we're kind of at this interesting tipping point where users, we do a lot of usability testing, and they're starting to get like just over that sort of downhill motion to like, okay, these are web applications, and this is not a website. And a web application has some differences. The back button's not going to work the same, for example, which is like early on when we started testing, the back button had all kinds of things that would confuse people. We see that much less frequently. I mentioned at the beginning, if you look at some of the general best practices that people are discussing, it's how to make it clear this is a website where the URL works in a predictable way and will always get you back to exactly the spot, versus a web application where you're going to get some richness and there's going to be
So is one of the best practices then maybe to keep that URL just fixed at the root of the domain? Is that sort of a trigger to people that, oh, here, you're on an application?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, just from my observation in the usability labs, people can just tell right away by the kind of interactions it supports, and that websites have such a long history of conventions that they can look at a website and just whack. They know this is a website versus a web application. That said, I do think that, you know, we're in a tipping point, and I hope that the design community can figure out more conventions to signal to users like whether to zig or zag in terms of their expectations. That's an excellent question. So I think, do we have time for one more?
Let's take one more question over there.
So one of the principles that I think was missing was the mother-in-law factor for the user experience. And how are we addressing, like you alluded to it, like the common issues of applying user experience to the least common denominator. All these tools, and for the technical savvy person, are very intuitive, but apply it to my mother-in-law who prints out websites as her bookmarks. How do you solve the bookmark state problem, the back state problem?
Wow, okay.
Definitely yours, Rick.
Yeah. So, it's kind of a fastball there, because that's a tough one, right? Like, we're breaking conventions that not even everyone's already learned, what do we do? I really think that we just have to kick that back to the design community. What does it mean to have rich internet applications? And so I think that the way the community deals with that right now is to say, like, you have a website or you have a web app. And, like, we'll try to send your mother-in-law to the web sites because they all kind of work the way they did before. Now, not 100% comfortable with that answer. I want everyone to be able to access the sites. I want everyone to have an awesome, usable experience, to have a seamless experience. But we are in this, it's Web 2.0. 2.0 is pretty early. Things are mixing up. Things are changing. So I'd love to talk more about this. We should totally blog this, because I think there's some other interesting effects that come from that. We call it the grocery store effect. If you reorganize the grocery store to make it easier to find things, people already know how to find things, get really miffed. And we see that same thing too. We can increase the efficiency of the site dramatically, but it alienates existing users. And that's kind of another paradox that we haven't figured out yet. So
unfortunately, we're out of time, but thanks again for coming. Really appreciate it. Rick and I will be down here if you want to talk. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.